I've been seeing a lot on social media where adult children are going no contact with their parents. While I'm not super emotionally close with my mother, I would never cut her off 100%, and I'm curious as to what's causing this. Research is showing that almost a quarter of American adults, like 27%, are doing some type of no contact with one or more parent. And I kind of like to get into this. Okay, I just need to interject right here. I noticed when I was editing this video that I only had one earring on. But you know what happened? When I was setting up my phone, I heard something fall. And I was looking all over and I could not find what fell, but now I know what it was. It was my other earring. So I'm just a little lopsided in this video. Deal with it. Hi, welcome back to the channel. It is chilly here today, so I've got my hoodie on and I've got a couple little space heaters going, and we're almost at Christmas. This'll probably not be posted till after the first of the year, but yeah, it's a little chilly. So I'm bundled up today. It's my day off and I'm just kind of hanging out, and I thought I was online and seeing all these TikToks and Instagrams and YouTube about this no contact crap. What I can't even imagine. I would assume that there are cases that are legitimate, abuse, things like that. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people that are just like deciding they don't want their family members in their life anymore. And I have a really hard time understanding that. Apparently some of the top reasons are abuse. I get that. Abuse is a thing. And if that's been your situation, then I would completely understand that. And that's got to just break your heart to not have, a relationship with your parents because they just were horribly abusive to you. I get that. Another thing I'm seeing is just bad parenting. Well, something I learned, and I think the reason I'm able to forgive and forget a lot, once I became a parent, I realized that we're all doing it for the first time. I know my parents' generation, which would be the boomers, they got married very young and had children very young. So they were children raising children. And a lot of them came from really rough, growing up. My mother, for instance, was very neglected. I mean, left alone for weeks at a time when she was 10 years old with her infant brother, and, no food in the house and all this kind of stuff. And she did not have any respect for her mother, I remember, as we were growing up. But she still went and saw her at Christmas. She still, kept in contact. It's not like we were hanging out. She wasn't one of our grandmas that we were over there all the time, but she kept a relationship with her mother over the years. And so then when my mom raised me, kind of the same thing. She wasn't neglectful, of course, like that, but emotionally, yes. I don't remember warm fuzzies with my mom. That was more my dad. And now that I'm an adult, our opinions on about 90% of everything differ, but I still would wish her no harm. I still would be there for her if she needed me. So, bad parenting is just one of those things that, no one's perfect. And they were learning as they went along, just like we're learning as we went along. And they had a lot less information available to them. So we have to kind of forgive a little bit. One thing that I see as well as a reason for this no contact is boundaries, not respecting boundaries. And I have tried very carefully as a mom and a grandma. I'm 58. I have 2 adult children. One's 36, one's 39. I'm not horrible, I should know that. And I have 5 grandkids. And I try to stay as involved as I can, but I also try not to get overly involved. If they call and ask me advice, I am happy to give it. I try not to, and I'm sure I have, and they will correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure I have offered advice or suggestions or comments that were not wanted because it's just, that's who I am. But I try not to. I try to check myself and not push myself into their lives too much. But I think the word boundaries has become a trigger word or a trending word, should we say, where we have this little boundary around us that no one's allowed to pass. And that's not what family is about. Family is about crossing boundaries. Family is about getting up in your business if you need them to. And sometimes, rather than setting a boundary, have a conversation, fight it out. So many people out there don't have any family at all and would give their last dollar or their leg or their arm or, to have a family member to fight with, So I think the generation that is doing this is maybe a little privileged. And again, I don't want you coming at me, well, my mom did this and my mom did this and abuse and blah, blah, blah. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people that are whining because their mom buys gifts for the kids and they didn't want them to. Or, these are the kind of silly things I'm seeing, and that's why I'm bringing it up. It's like boundaries against abuse and things like that makes sense. But boundaries against trying to be involved in your children's lives or in your life is just out of love, and you need to be forgiving and you need to accept, what they're offering out of love. I don't even know how to put this in words. And I know no matter what I say, it's going to get twisted. And then, of course, we've got those that the political climate has caused it. I have seen so much on the internet where families are split, broken up, gone no contact over political differences. That's ridiculous, because political stuff, crap, bullshit, has been there since day one, and there's always been differences. It's just before the internet and the access of so much information, we didn't get as riled up about it because we were busy living our lives. And if you really think about it, if you shut off the news and the social media and all the commentary and all that crap, and you just live your life, none of the political crap even makes a difference in your life. I had to learn that. I never cut anybody off in my family or anything like that because of political differences, but during the last few years when it was really heightened and that was kind of all you saw on the internet and stuff, I would just get myself worked up about it. And then I realized, why am I worked up about something that's been going on for a zillion years? And so I don't watch the news anymore. And I'll check in once in a while on YouTube on first I'll read the headline. Is this worth looking at, or is this just something that's, if the headline immediately makes me angry, I know it's clickbait. So I don't read it. Because it's bull crap. And there's nothing I can do about it anyway. But I've had a video on that before. But to disown a family member because their opinion on something politically is different than yours, come on. I had a family member that I thought I was I am very close with them. I'm not going to name who the family member was because I don't need that in this video. But during this last presidential election, when Trump was voted in for the second, or was looking like he was going to get voted in for the second time, we were having a conversation, and they are on the left, and I kind of ride center to right. And they told me that if Trump got elected, they were going to move out of the country, or they were seriously thinking about it. And I thought, wow, that's extreme. Wow. Okay. So instead of reacting and getting all crazy with them and telling them they were stupid and all this kind of stuff, I said, let's have a chat about it. So we had a talk, and we talked about all the people in our lives that may or may not be voting for Trump, and those that may be voting for Trump, and how that person felt about these people as family members. And this person was like, well, yeah, they're great, I love them, blah, blah, blah. And I says, okay, so obviously, you don't think they're crazy or anything because they're voting for Trump. Well, you may not agree with their political. You love them. They're kind people. They're not horrible. And yet they might vote for Trump. So apparently, they wouldn't be moving out of the country if a leftist got voted. I mean, I don't understand where this heightened reaction is coming from. Well, after talking about it a little bit, it was the internet and all the garbage they were being funneled into their brain to be fearful. of something that, I mean, like I explained to this person, I says, Trump's been president before and the world didn't end. You know, we made it through Biden. You know, we've made it through really bad presidents, and we've made it through really good presidents. They come and go. And no matter who's voted in, half the country hates them. Yeah, that's, once you realize that, no matter who's voted in, half the country hates them. And America still is one of the best countries. I mean, we have freedoms that some people don't dream, some people just dream of. You know, we are not without our faults. There is a lot of things about America I'd love to change, but you know, it is what it is, and no country's perfect. So, running away from your problems or putting up boundaries because you don't like the way they think or whatever is just, it's fearful, and it's weak. And I mean, putting up a boundary and I'm not blah, 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 that sounds like strength, but it's really weakness because you're not strong enough to deal with that other person in a mature manner. So you're just going to cut them off. I guess that's what I was trying to say. And then kind of piggybacking on that thought is the mental health awareness that has become a thing in the last decade. Mental health is a thing, I get it. But now, like, everyone has some kind of mental health issue. Everyone has something going on. And instead of just living your life and working through it, everyone's got a label. Everyone's got mental health issues. And there's got to be a reason for those mental health issues. And so you go to your parents and blame them. You know? While you're living with them as a kid and going through things, I get it. But once you're an adult, now you have to take responsibility for who you are and what you're going to do going forward. This word trauma, this word, past trauma, all this kind of stuff. We've all got our shit. We've all got things we've gone through. But if you want to just live your life as a victim, that's weak. You need to find your inner strength, and you need to push through it, and you need to be the bigger person and not, like I said, parents, when they hold that baby in the hospital the first time, especially back in our day, there was no book telling us how to do it. There was no internet how to do it. And honestly, a lot of the crap that's on the internet is bullshit anyway. There are so many specialists. A lot of them don't even have kids. Everyone's got their situation. But to carry that into adulthood and keep blaming someone who really did the best they could. And again, we're not talking about abuse or anything like that. We're talking about just maybe some bad decisions or decisions that maybe weren't bad, but you just view them that way. To cut those people out of your life when all they want to do is show you love. Maybe they don't know how to show love. Maybe you can teach them by leading by example. Cutting someone off is not showing love. It's showing selfishness. It's showing weakness. It's showing cowardness. I don't know. I guess we just need to talk about it. Like I said, I have 2 adult daughters. One of them I don't talk to as much. We have kind of a group text between the 3 of us, and I'll see her respond in there and stuff, but her and I don't have that one-on-one conversation every day. I don't feel like she's cut me off. But I keep my distance because I don't want to inject myself into her life more than she wants me there. And maybe, now that I've just said that, maybe she finds that as I am not showing her the attention she needs. I don't know. I send her random texts reminding her that I love her and I'm thinking of her, separately from the group text and things like that, because I think of her every day. I do. I wonder what she's doing. But I don't want to overbear her with my presence if that isn't wanted or needed. She loves her family. She's got a great husband. She's told me before that, her husband is her person and that's who she talks to. And, so it's just a different dynamic. I know it all changed when she went to college. And I blame it on that. I blame the separation of some of the thought processes that she went through and changes she went through the college years. But she's not a bad person. We have different opinions on things. That's fine. I'm a great person. She's a great person. We love each other, but we're just not connected in the same way. My other daughter, we talk 2 or 3 times a day over the phone. We text back and forth constantly. I see her more often. She tells me what's going on in her life. She asks for advice. We're just super tight. And I don't know what the difference is. I joke when I say one went to college, one didn't, and that's the problem. Probably isn't the problem at all. It's just personality differences. One is much more independent. The other one's a little more community-based. They're totally different. But I don't feel cut off. I just feel like she's doing her thing. And when she's got time, we'll hang out, or a lot of times the 3 of us will do something together more than just one-on-one with her and I. Where with the other one, there's more one-on-one stuff. But I think their marriage relationships are different. And so there's different needs and wants from them, from me, that kind of thing. And like I've said, with my mom, right now I'm parked in her driveway. I feel like now in her older years, she's trying to make up for the previous relationship kind of things. When I was little, like when I think back, I don't remember warm and fuzzy with my mom. I remember discipline. I remember weird rules. I remember temper. But she had a lot of anxiety. She had digestive issues and stomach issues and migraines, and she had a lot going on. She had a lot going on. And I know my older sister gave her a lot of trouble. So by the time I came around, she was over it and she wasn't going to put up with any bullshit. So my teenage years, she was very, she would accuse me of things I didn't do. She was always looking for me being up to something, even when I wasn't. Wasn't that I wasn't always up to something, but she would accuse me of things that I wasn't doing. And that caused a problem. That caused, some anger on my part, and I just pulled away. And then after my father passed away, she immediately jumped into another relationship. Within a couple of years, with a guy who was just a jerk face. He didn't want anything to do with the family. He changed the locks on the door where we had always had an open door policy. He pulled her from the family and wanted it just to be them, and he was very jealous of any relationship she had with family, extended family or even the kids. And my children did not grow up with a grandmother because she was with him. And they just lived their own life. They did their own thing together. He was very possessive of her. And so while they were growing up, they really don't know her as grandma because she wasn't around. And I think me and my other sisters as well were angry that she chose a man like that to be in her life after being with my father, who was the most generous, loving, welcoming man you would ever meet. And then to have someone change the locks on the doors where you couldn't come in and you weren't supposed to come over unless you called first. And, just you'd walk in and he would just scowl at you like, what are you doing here? He never smiled. He was just an ass. And she kind of took on his personality briefly for a while, as you do when you live with somebody. And then after he was gone, I've had some conversations with her about that. And she knows. She knows that he was a jerk, but she was with him for 20 years. The whole time my kids were growing up and when I was married and stuff. So we did not have a relationship. And like I said, my childhood relationship with her was never warm and fuzzy. And then we had that situation for 20 years. And now she's alone and she's trying very hard to remedy some of that, but we still there's a wall there that will always be there. But she's my mother. I love her. I will take care of her. I will make sure she's taken care of. When I'm here and I'm in her driveway, I'm checking on her daily. I'm making sure, do you need anything at the store? If she needs a ride somewhere, I'll take her. I don't hang out in the house and spend hours with her because she would drive me nuts. But I'm not going to cut her off because I don't feel like she was a good mother when I was younger, or even a good grandmother. She was, like I said, quick to temper and she's still very judgy. There's things I don't tell her because I don't want to be judged by her. But, that's my personal thing on it, and my other two sisters, same thing. I don't feel like they have warm and fuzzy with my mom, especially my oldest one that had given her so much trouble. She had ran away several times as a teenager, and her and my mom had a very rough relationship, and they still have a very tense relationship, but she still loves mom, and she is over here, a couple times a month helping her in the yard. And I guess maybe we were just raised that family is important, and maybe that's the difference, or how people can cut people off. I just don't get it. I don't get how you can cut some people off. I have people in my family that have done horrible things not my personal family. I mean, I have a huge extended family, cousins, aunts, uncles. I have people in my family who have said or done horrible things to me, emotionally, personally. But when I see them now, I still give them a hug. I tell them I love them. I would never cut anybody off like that. I mean, I just don't get it. I don't get it. I think it's important for the adult children that are making these choices to have empathy. And I know there's a lot of people out there that say, I'm an empath. I can feel people's feelings and da-da-da. Well, bullshit. If you could, you would never cut anybody off like this. There's a lot of labels that go around about, empathy and sympathy and blah, 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 blah. I don't believe love ever ends. I believe if you've loved somebody at any time in your life, that love goes on forever. It may change and it may be fluid. Like my ex-husband, for instance. We were married 23 years. And I will always love him. He will always love me. It's not the same love, but we care about each other. We would not want any harm on each other. Do I want to be married to him? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I left for a reason, but I would never I did not cut him off. I did not, I did a video on this before. I wasn't going to break down the entire family just because him and I didn't want to live together anymore, And it's not like we talk, we see each other at the holidays. In fact, this year he's decided not to come for Christmas. That's made his kids a little upset, but it's his life. He does what he wants. He's got his relationship with his kids, whatever. I'm not going to hate him for any of it. There's moments where I'm very angry with him, but the love's always there underneath. And I feel like, if you never loved your parent at all, you need to ask yourself why. You need to stop putting it on them and figure out what's wrong with you. How can you not love someone that... Now, again, let's cross out abuse. And I'm not talking about the occasional spanking. I'm talking about abuse. Would be weird for a child not to love their parent. Ever. Ever. They fed you. They clothed you. They gave you a home to live in. They took you on vacations. They whatever. I'm talking about the fairly normal families out there, and now these kids are cutting them off because of boundaries or because of political differences or, come on, grow up a little bit. Now back to the research, the little bit I've read, I don't go into it a lot, but the little bit I've read says that this estrangement or this cutting off happens in the early 20s, and it's usually right after college. I'm sorry, I never went to college. None of my family went to college. We're all entrepreneurs. We are very free thinkers. And so that's why I laugh when I say, my one child changed when she went to college and became more of a tribal thinker, I think. So that's only my experience. But she's also very independent. She owns her own business. She's very strong, and I couldn't be more proud of her. But yeah, she changed a little bit when she went to college, and she married into a family that was different than ours, not as loud, not as obnoxious, and so I think that kind of toned her down a little bit too, as far as, the big rowdy family that she came from. But I think another thing that has caused, I want to go back to reasons why this is happening. I think when I was growing up, the LGBT thing wasn't even a thing. And people my age, if you were gay or something, they hid that. A lot of that was hidden. It was on the down low. And now it's out in the open more. And so I think that would probably cause some issues, when parents that came from a generation like my age where you didn't talk about it, it wasn't a thing, it wasn't an identity, and then all of a sudden now it is, and it's out in the open and everyone's talking about it, and there's going to be some clash there. I don't think it's so much a problem with, well, I don't know, because I know there are people my age that are very, very right-wing conservative. And then there's also people my age that are very, very liberal left, and I think the people in the middle, like me, I don't have a problem with the LGBT, whatever. I have friends. I'm a hairdresser. Of course I have friends that are gay or lesbian, and I don't have a problem with them. I do have a problem with the extremists, and pushing it on children, that kind of thing. I don't have a problem with your sexual orientation, but it shouldn't define, or define is not the word. It shouldn't be talked around children. I'm not talking to children about what I do in the bedroom. Why are you? It's just, that's the thing. But I think that also plays a part into some of this, cutting people off because maybe the parents are super right-winged and conservative, and they're having a hard time understanding why now all of a sudden sexual preference is in the forefront of conversation. But that's something that just needs to be worked out. They're still family, and they still love you. They may not know how to deal with this openness because that isn't how they were raised. And that's the thing you have to understand, is you're dealing with a parent that was raised completely different than how you were raised. And when I say raised, not only how the parent raised you, but what's going on in the world, when they were growing up, and what was accepted and it wasn't accepted. It's evolving, and you can't just cut somebody off. It's like, let me think about it a little bit here, a scenario that wouldn't have to do with emotions and things like that. Okay, you've got a German Shepherd. I had this German Shepherd one time, and he was beautiful. He was a King Shepherd, had super thick, beautiful fur, and blah, blah, blah. And this is when I was young, so I didn't have him as an indoor dog. My husband wouldn't let me. So he was outdoors, and he had a big run. He had a whole yard and a doghouse, and the whole thing was insulated. We took the best care of him we could. But anyway, cold of winter, he's out there. Well, I would feel bad, and I would try to bring him into the house because I felt bad he was out there. He didn't want to be, and he would lay by the door and just pant because he was hot. He didn't want to be inside. He wanted to be outside. So it's not that he didn't love me and didn't want to be with me. He just didn't understand, why are you making me come inside where it's hot? I want to be outside where it's cold, and that's kind of where we're talking about. If you're living in one world and growing up in that one world, and that's all you know, and now all of a sudden this person, is trying to pull you into their world, and wants you to be like them, wants you to be warm, and you're like, no, I love you, but I want to be, it's going to clash. And that's how you have to look at your family members, especially the older generation. And when I say older generation, I mean my mothers and, your grandmothers and stuff that are in their 80s, and then us who are in our 50s and 60s. We were raised and grew up in a world that is different than yours. So don't be so hard on them and cut them off because they just can't fit into your world. You have to make accommodations for that. Maybe step outside a little bit and go out in the cold with them a little bit more. Or, leave a window open. You know what I'm saying? Just try to make accommodations, and don't expect them to change as rapidly as the world is changing, because we came from a world that was slower. Things did not change as quickly. There was no internet. There was no constant conversation and heated arguments and debate and all this constantly going on. We thought for ourselves a lot more. And so it's hard for us to see those that we love getting whirlwind up into this, what we would call crazy, or just, emotional turmoil over things that are really, when you think about it, not that important. Boundaries are fine, but you have to be flexible. If you're hurting that other person more than it's really worth, then you need to be flexible. You need to stop being so selfish. And we're all selfish and we have a right to be on occasion, but sometimes you just need to open that window and let a little cool air in, you know what I'm saying? Social media will validate your bad decisions. Right now, it's a trend to go no contact, to be estranged from your parents, to, you know, all this kind of stuff. And the conversation is rabid. And if you go out there and you say that's something you're doing, you will have 10 million zillion people telling bravo and cheering you on and making you feel good about that decision. I'm here to say that's not always a good decision. I'm here to go against the grain a little bit. And I think our generation does that. And that's probably why some people are cutting us off. But I'm just asking you to, you know, be empathetic of the person on the other side of that fence you're putting up. Why are they acting the way they're acting? Why can't they change as quickly as you want them to? Why can't you love them where they're at? What kind of person do you want to be? You know, what is the legacy you're leaving behind for your children? If you can show your children that are growing up that you can cut off a person that loved you and cared for you and only wants to show you love the only way they know how do you think they're going to treat you when you get older? You're teaching those children. It's just like, it's almost as bad as a mother staying in a horribly physically abusive relationship for the sake of the children. What is that teaching those children about how relationships work? You are teaching your children how relationships work, how to love, how to care, how to forgive. What kind of legacy are you leaving behind by cutting off the people who raised you when they've really done nothing horribly wrong other than maybe hurt your feelings or, you know, injected their opinion where it maybe wasn't wanted a few times? I'm seeing mostly online, it's the millennials and Gen Z that are cutting off the Gen Xers more than anything, because most of us Gen Xers were raised by the boomers and we're over it, or they're dead or whatever. But it's the generation that was raised with the internet that are willing to cut off their family members for very small slights or difference of opinion or, you know, just really silly reasons, honestly. I mean, if you have to take a break, that's fine. But to say I'm going no contact, I'm cutting this person out of my life, you know, and publicly announcing that online, which, by the way, online is forever. I know I'll probably pay for a lot of what I say. Just think about it. You know, I know right now I'm feeling a little nostalgic because of the holidays and all that kind of stuff, although this will post a few weeks after that. Going into this new year, you know, everyone has their resolutions. Think about being a little more empathetic, a little more loving, and think about the legacy you're leaving for your children. I think a lot of the non-fuzzy I felt from my mom, oh, now I'm going to get teary, is from the way who she was raised by. You know, her mother was an alcoholic and, you know, just left her alone. Like I said, for weeks, and, you know, was at the bar all the time. She was a horrible mother. My mother ended up being raised by her grandmother after that because, you know, someone had to take her in. Her mom was never around, and she had these younger brothers and sisters to take care of, and she had a horrible life. I mean, she lived in a shack where you could see through the wood slats outside. There was no insulation. I mean, the stories she tells are just amazing. And this wasn't out in the Appalachian Mountains. This was here in Washington State, you know. Very poor, very neglected mother, probably abusive. And so I have to give her a little grace on not being super warm and fuzzy as a mom with me. And I would never cut her off. Like I said, even when she was with Jerkface, you know, I still loved her, even though she pulled away because she was with Jerkface all those years. I still, every time I saw her, she got a hug from me. I told her I loved her. We did Christmas and holidays together when we could. Sometimes we didn't even do holidays together because he didn't want to do it. But I always tried to invite her, you know, and try to keep her involved because you only get one mom. You only get one dad, you know. And I'm sorry that my children didn't have a relationship with their grandmother. That's on her. But I'm not going to hate her for it. I'm not going to cut her off, you know, and now that she has great grandchildren, when I have the kids, I always say, hey, go in and say hi to your grandma. And of course, she puts a smile on and acts like she's the greatest great grandma in the world, even though, you know, she knows nothing about her great grandkids. She really doesn't, you know, other than what I tell her. She sees them at Christmas and Thanksgiving and maybe Easter. And that's about it, you know. She doesn't put any effort forward. I invite her to do things, you know, but, you know, she's getting older and she doesn't like to be around all the noise and stuff. I get it. But I have to give her a little grace because she was raised in a different world than I was raised in. I was raised in a different world than my kids were raised in, and they are raising their children in a different world than they were raised in. And so each generation, we have to give grace to the generation before for what they went through and how they interpreted that and how they made it through, and then how they did it maybe differently, although not perfectly. Have a great day.